Happy Friday. Made it through another week. No robot Kyo tonight. I'm working on a project. Friday. I see a Sharkies in chat. At least one Sharkies. Oh, and an Ericer saying Friday is your Sunday. Alright, well, I hope you've had a good weekend then. I'm feeling slightly out of focus. Hey, camera. I'm way back here, camera. I'm over here, camera. Good enough. I don't mind being a little out of focus. I see a name in the chat that I don't recognize. F2 Payer. Your weekend was not as productive as it needed to be. Hello, Sharkies. Weekends don't always need to be productive, unless this particular one really did need to be, but rest is important too. Rest is productive. There we go. So Ericer hasn't been here for a bit. I don't actually remember the last one that you caught, but we've probably gone a little further in the book. We're currently on page 175 out of 412, I think. Yeah, 412. You're very behind. Sharkies say, just came back from Dressu and you're having sushi with the mother-in-law. Oh, alright, cool. Sushi. I feel like I haven't had good sushi probably since before the pandemic, to be honest. I've had some okay sushi, but like we haven't gone to a sushi restaurant, and I feel like sushi is something that just doesn't transport well. It doesn't retain its full effect once it's, tossed into a styrofoam container. Farmos thinks Dressu is a dangerous store. So I'm not certain, but I think the last time Ericer was at one of the, or joined one of the streams may have been before Carrot was introduced as a character. And if that's the case, then it may have been around page 30 or so. About 110 pages ago-ish. Or 140 pages or so. 140 pages or so ago, I think. Sharkies went in for a couple things and left with all the things because sale. Alright, well, sale's as good a reason as any, right? Although, if Ericer hasn't been around since before Carrot was introduced. Wow, That's a lot of the book. I was gonna say that's almost before Vimes was introduced. There was a glimpse of him staggering through the streets before that, but that's about it. I think pretty much you know the characters of the Elucidated Brethren, and that might be just about it. Oh, you met Carrot? Okay, okay. Sharky didn't go in for many things and spent over a hunter. Super recap time. All right, Farmos, go. Super recap. It's your job. Catch Erica up. Where's the puppy? Where's the puppy? Being a bit. Oh, I hear him. I don't see him yet, but I hear him. Oh, I saw movement. What are you doing down there, Ben? No. Too spooked. Doesn't want to come in. Carrot tried to arrest the Thieves Guild. Yeah, that's about right. To be... Hey. Okay, let's see. So Carrot got sent by his father to be a man in the City Watch. Um, Went and arrested the head of the Thieves Guild and marched him up to the palace, which was embarrassing for everyone involved, except for maybe Carrot. Um, then, let's see. Vimes assigned Nobby, or maybe Sergeant Colin assigned Nobby to show Carrot the ropes. Um, so off they went. In the meantime, a thief got incinerated by a dragon, which Vimes began investigating. Showed the crime scene, as it were, to the patrician, who insisted that it couldn't be a dragon, must be a wading bird, which of course Vimes did not accept. Neither really did Vetinari, but he was just trying to brush it under the rug, so to speak. Yeah, I think you're a little out of order, Farmos. Well, maybe not quite. So, anyways, yeah. Then Carrot, yeah, tried to arrest basically the entire Mended Drum bar, big bar fight, which Carrot survived. Um, then pretty much all of the members of the Watch got drunk and stumbled into a bad part of town called the Shades, where they were about to be mugged by or murdered by some individuals from the Shades, but said individuals got incinerated by a dragon. Um, Vimes, yeah, went up and met Lady Ramkin, Lady Sybil Ramkin, who is a very rich, um, maybe not so posh aristocrat that spends basically all of her time breeding swamp dragons, which are sort of little chemical fire hazards that might explode without warning. Um, she said, yeah, there's no big dragons. Um, then they saw the dragon flying around above the city, setting fire to, oh, say, a vegetable stand and one particular coach that was pretty nice prior to being incinerated. Then the dragon vanished, and Nobby was like, oh man, bet that dragon sleeps on treasure. And Vimes was like, uh oh, if Nobby's thinking that, then so is the rest of Ankh-Morpork. So soon enough, the patrician had posted a reward of like $50,000 or something for the head of the dragon, not attached to said dragon. A bunch of dragon hunters, well, heroes and general adventurers showed up and were like, oh, this reward sucks. It's supposed to be half the kingdom and his daughter's hand in marriage. Yeah, then let's see. The dragon showed up again a night or two later while the watch were sitting on top of the watch house trying to keep an eye open for it. I guess it was that evening. Burnt the watch house to a puddle. Everyone dove off the roof more or less. Well, Carrot scooped up Vimes and dove off the roof. Vimes woke up in Lady Ramkin's bed with some very bruised ribs. They had a little chat about said dragon. Yeah. That's roughly where we're at. That's roughly 140 pages. Look at that, it only took like, I don't know, 6 minutes to recap? I'm sure I've missed many details. Missed the introduction of Cut Me On Throat Dibbler, purveyor of definitely not stolen goods. Or definitely not shady sausages. Yeah. I've spent all day reading and planning for the D&D game, which we're doing session 04 on Sunday, and so my brain is slightly leaking out my ears just from yeah, spending all day with my nose in various books and whatnot. Elucidated with an E. And brethren. Not brothers. Jeez. Whatever. Yeah, the elucidated brethren have been hard at work stealing whatever magical items they can get their hands on to use in the fuel of summoning the dragon, which they have at this point done 4 times, I think. 2 times in alleyways and 2 times flying around the city. I think that's roughly accurate. So yeah, that's roughly where we are. So what do you think? Should we get right into it? Should I dive in to page 175 of Guard's Guards? There's the dragon. Not quite how I picture the dragon. I picture it being a little more slender and having a less of a weird knobby nose. To me that looks more like what a scaled up swamp dragon might look like. Really doesn't want to focus right now though, unfortunately. If I do that. Yeah, you get the idea. No, I'm not going to talk about that bit. Not going to talk about the king. If anyone wants to know about that bit, they can read your recap. I can see it there on the screen. Okay. Yeah, Farmhouse had physiotherapy today. Got poked and prodded with needles and things like that. So he's laying recumbent on the couch. presumably. That might be partly why Puppy didn't want to come say hi. Puppy's being a nursemaid, I think. Semi-recumbent. Yeah, okay. Well, apparently I'm bad at structuring my own sentences tonight. Like I said, brain leaking out my ears, so I should probably just read the ones that are already written here, so that I don't have to try and form them myself. Because anytime I stop to think about what to say next, I end up just kind of spacing out and staring into space. Spacing out and staring into space. Yeah, there we go. There's an example. So, I'm going to read this book. Feel free to listen to me read the book. That's what you're here for. Feel free to talk about me reading the book or the contents of the book that I'm reading to you. Okay? Sounds like a good idea. Here I go. Okay. I'm going to backtrack about a paragraph just to catch us up. Vimes lay in bed, his mind racing. Pseudopolis Yard, which is where the building that Lady Sybil has decided to donate to the Watch to be their new watch house since their old one got melted. Pseudopolis Yard was on the Ankh side of the river, in quite a high-rent district. The sight of Nobby or Sergeant Colin walking down the street in daylight would probably have the same effect on the area as the opening of a plague hospital. He dozed, gliding in and out of a sleep where giant dragons pursued him waving jars of ointment, and awoke to the sound of a mob. Lady Ramkin, drawing herself up haughtily, was not a sight to forget, although you could try. It was like watching continental drift in reverse, as various subcontinents and islands pulled themselves together to form one massive, angry proto-woman. The broken door of the Dragon House swung on its hinges. The inmates, already as highly strung as a harp on amphetamines, were going mad. Little gouts of flame burst against the metal plates as they stampeded back and forth in their pens. "What," she said, "is the meaning of this?" To be clear, it is spelled H-W-H-A-T. If a Ramkin had ever been given to introspection, she'd have admitted that it wasn't a very original line. But it was handy. It did the job. The reason that clichés become clichés is that they are the hammers and screwdrivers in the toolbox of communication. The mob filled the broken doorway. Some of it was waving various sharp implements with the up and down motion proper to rioters. "Worrell," said the leader. "It's the dragon, isn't it?" There was a chorus of muttered agreement. "What about it?" said Lady Ramkin. "Worrell, it's been burning the city. They don't fly far. You got dragons here. Could be one of them, couldn't it? Yeah, straight. QED. Footnote 1. Some rioters can be quite well educated. End of footnote 1. So, what we're going to do is, we're going to put 'em down. Straight. Yeah. Pro bono publico. Just realized that my own volume is on here. I'm hearing myself through my headset. I should make sure... Okay, good. Alright, back to it, sorry. Lady Ramkin's bosom rose and fell like an empire. She reached out and grabbed the dunging fork from its hook on the wall. One step nearer, I warn you, and you'll be sorry, she said. The leader looked beyond her to the frantic dragons. Yeah, he said nastily. And what'll you do, eh? Her mouth opened and shut once or twice. I shall summon the watch, she said at last. The threat did not have the effect she had expected. Lady Ramkin had never paid much attention to those bits of the city that didn't have scales on. Well, that's too bad, said the leader. That's really worrying, you know that. Makes me go all weak at the knees, that does. He extracted a lengthy cleaver from his belt. And now you just stand aside, lady, because... A streak of green fire blasted out of the back of the shed, passed a foot over the heads of the mob, and burned a charred rosette in the woodwork over the door. Then came a voice that was a honeyed purr of sheer deadly menace. This is Lord Mountjoy Quickfang Winterforth the Fourth, the hottest dragon in the city. It could burn your head clean off. Captain Vimes limped forward from the shadows. A small and extremely frightened golden dragon was clamped firmly under one arm. His other hand held it by the tail. The rioters watched it, hypnotized. Now, I know what you're thinking, Vimes went on softly. You're wondering, after all this excitement, has it got enough flame left? And you know, I ain't so sure myself. He leaned forward, sighting between the dragon's ears, and his voice buzzed like a knife blade. What you've got to ask yourself is, am I feeling lucky? They swayed backwards as he advanced. Well, he said, are you feeling lucky? For a few moments, the only sound was Lord Mountjoy Quickfang Winterforth the Fourth's stomach rumbling ominously as fuel sloshed into his flame chambers. Now look, said the leader, his eyes fixed hypnotically on the dragon's head. There's no call for anything like that. In fact, he might just decide to flare off all by himself, said Vimes. They have to do it to stop the gas building up. It builds up when they get nervous. And, you know, I reckon you've made them all pretty nervous now. The leader made what he hoped was a vaguely conciliatory gesture, but unfortunately did it with the hand that was still holding a knife. Drop it, said Vimes sharply, or your history. The knife clanged on the flagstones. There was a scuffle at the back of the crowd as a number of people, metaphorically speaking, were a long way away and knew nothing about it. But before the rest of you good citizens disperse quietly and go about your business, said Vimes meaningfully, I suggest you look hard at these dragons. Do any of them look 60 feet long? Would you say they've got an 80-foot wingspan? How hot do they flame, would you say? Dunno, said the leader. Vimes raised the dragon's head slightly. The leader rolled his eyes. Dunno, sir, he corrected. Do you want to find out? The leader shook his head. But he did manage to find his voice. Who are you, anyway? He said. Vimes drew himself up. Captain Vimes, City Watch, he said. This met with almost complete silence. The exception was the cheerful voice, somewhere in the back of the crowd, which said, Night shift, is it? Vimes looked down at his nightshirt. In his hurry to get off his sickbed, he'd shuffled hastily into a pair of Lady Ramkin's slippers. For the first time, he saw they had pink pom-poms on them. And it was at this moment that Lord Mountjoy Quickfang Winterforth the Fourth chose to belch. It wasn't another stab of roaring fire. It was just a near-invisible ball of damp flame which rolled over the mob and singed a few eyebrows. But it definitely made an impression. Vimes rallied magnificently. They couldn't have noticed his brief moment of sheer horror. "That one was just to get your attention," he said, poker-faced. "The next one will be a little lower." Said the leader. "Right you are. No problem. We were just going anyhow. No big dragons here, right enough. Sorry you've been troubled." "Oh, no," said Lady Ramkin triumphantly. "You don't get away that easily." She reached up onto a shelf and produced a tin box. It had a slot in the lid. It rattled. On the side was the legend, "The Sunshine Sanctuary for Sick Dragons." The initial whip round produced $4.31. After Captain Vimes gestured pointedly with the dragon, a further $25.16 were miraculously forthcoming. Then the mob fled. "We made a profit on the day, anyway," said Vimes when they were alone again. "That was jolly brave of you." "Let's just hope it doesn't catch on," said Vimes, gingerly putting the exhausted dragon back in its pen. He felt quite light-headed. Once again, he was aware of eyes staring fixedly at him. He glanced sideways into the long, pointed face of good boy Bindle Featherstone, rearing up in a pose best described as the last puppy in the shop. To his astonishment, he found himself reaching over and scratching it behind its ears, or at least behind the two spiky things at the sides of its head, which were presumably its ears. It responded with a strange noise that sounded like a complicated blockage in a brewery. He took his hand away hurriedly. "It's all right," said Lady Ramkin. "It's his stomach's rumbling. That means he likes you." To his amazement, Vimes found that he was rather pleased about this. As far as he could recall, nothing in his life before had thought him worth a burp. "I thought you were, going to get rid of him," he said. "I suppose I shall have to," she said. "You know how it is, though. They look up at you with those big, soulful eyes." There was a brief, mutual, awkward silence. "How would it be if I—" "You don't think you might like—" They both stopped. It'd be the least I could do," said Lady Ramkin. "But you're already giving us the new headquarters and everything." "That was simply my duty as a good citizen," said Lady Ramkin. "Please accept good boy as a friend." Vimes felt that he was being inched out over a very deep chasm on a very thin plank. "I don't even know what they eat," he said. "They're omnivores, actually," she said. "They eat everything except metal and igneous rocks. You can't be finicky, you see, when you evolve in a swamp." "But doesn't he need to be taken for walks? Or flights or whatever?" "He seems to sleep most of the time." She scratched the ugly thing on top of its scaly head. "He's the most relaxed dragon I've ever bred, I must say." What about, you know," he indicated the dunging fork. "Well, it's mainly gas. Just keep him somewhere well ventilated. You haven't got any valuable carpets, have you? It's best not to let them lick your face, but they can be trained to control their flame. They're very helpful for lighting fires." Good boy Bindle Featherstone curled up amidst a barrage of plumbing noises. "They've got 8 stomachs," Vimes remembered. The drawings in the book had been very detailed. "And there's lots of other stuff like fractional distillation tubes and mad alchemy sets in there." No swamp dragon could ever terrorize a kingdom, except by accident. Vimes wondered how many had been killed by enterprising heroes. It was terribly cruel to do something like that to creatures whose only crime was to blow themselves absent-mindedly to pieces in midair, which was not something any individual dragon made a habit of. It made him quite angry to think about it. A race of whittles. That's what dragons were. Born to lose. Live fast, die wide. Omnivores or not, what they must really live on was their nerves, flapping apologetically through the world in mortal fear of their own digestive system. The family would be just getting over Father's explosion, and some twerp in a suit of armor would come plodding into the swamp to stick a sword into a bag of guts that was only one step away from self-destruction in any case. Huh. It'd be interesting to see how the great dragon slayers of the past stood up to the big dragon. Armor? Best not to wear it. It'd all be the same in any case, and at least your ashes wouldn't come pre-packaged in their own foil. He stared and stared at the malformed little thing, and the idea that had been knocking for attention for the last few minutes finally gained entrance. Everyone in Ankh-Morpork wanted to find the dragon's lair. At least, wanted to find it empty. Bits of wood on a stick wouldn't do it, he was certain. But, as they said a thief. Footnote 1. The phrase, set a thief to catch a thief, had by this time, after strong representations from the Thieves' Guild, replaced a much older and quintessentially Ankh-Morporkian proverb, which was, set a deep hole with spring-loaded sides, tripwires, whirling knife blades driven by water power, broken glass, and scorpions to catch a thief. End of footnote. He said, could one dragon sniff out another? I mean, follow a scent? Alright, let me catch up on the chat. Farmos has been enjoying the scene. Impressed with her chest rose and fell like an empire. Such a great line. John Wayne reference number 2 at least. Yeah, no kidding. Oh, although the Sharky say, I believe that one is Clint Eastwood. Yeah, the Are You Feeling Lucky? I'm pretty sure is. Farmos says right, yes, not John Wayne, thank you. Farmo says, OMG, they're so adorable, to which the Sharkies say, yes, it's an awkward but cute relationship. Farmos feels like the best ones usually start that way, at least. The Sharkies say, I know ours did. Oh. Alright. More or less got up. Dearest Mother, wrote Carrot, talk about a turn-up for the books. Last night, the dragon burned up our headquarters, and lo and behold, we have been given a better one. It is in a place called Pseudopolis Yard, opposite the Opera House. Sergeant Colin said we have gone up in the world, and has told Nobby not to try to sell the furnishings. Going up in the world is a metaphor, which I am learning about. It is like lying, but more decorative. There are proper carpets to spit on. Twice today, groups of people have tried to search the cellars here for the dragon. It is amazing. And digging up people's privies and poking into attics, it is like a fever. One thing is, people haven't got time for much else, and Sergeant Colin says, when you go out on your rounds and shout 12 of the clock and all's well while a dragon is melting the street, you feel a bit of a Burke. I have moved out of Mrs. Palm's because there are dozens of bedrooms here. It was sad, and they made me a cake, but I think it is for the best. Although Mrs. Palm never charged me rent, which was very nice of her, considering she is a widow with so many fine daughters to bring up, plus dowries, etc. Also, I have made friends with this ape, who keeps coming round to see if we have found his book. Nobby says it is a flea-ridden moron because it won 18D off him playing Cripple Mr. Onion, which is a game of chance with cards which I do not play. I have told Nobby about the Gambling Regulation Acts, and he said, piss off, which I think is in violation of the Decency Ordinances of 1389, but I have decided to use my discretion. Captain Vimes is ill, and is being looked after by a lady. Nobby says it is well known she is mental, but Sergeant Colin says it's just because of living in a big house with a lot of dragons, but she is worth a fortune, and well done to the captain for getting his feet under the table. I do not see what the furniture has to do with it. This morning I went for a walk with Reet, and showed her many interesting examples of the ironwork to be found in the city. She said it was very interesting. She said I was quite different to anyone she's ever met. Your loving son, Carrot. X. P.S. I hope Minty is keeping well. No more love to Minty. He folded the paper carefully and shoved it into the envelope. Sun's going down, said Sergeant Colin. Carrot looked up from his sealing wax. That means it will be night soon, Colin went on, accurately. Yes, Sergeant. Colin ran a finger around his collar. His skin was impressively pink, the result of a morning's scrubbing, but people were still staying at a respectful distance. Sergeant Colin, when they dove off the roof, Vimes bounced off of the roof of a privy. Sergeant Colin did not. Some people are born to command. Some people achieve command. And others have command thrust upon them. And the sergeant was now included in this category and wasn't very happy about it. Any minute now, he knew, he was going to have to say that it was time they went out on patrol. He didn't want to go out on patrol. He wanted to find a nice sub-basement somewhere. But, noblesse oblige, if he was in charge, he had to do it. It wasn't the loneliness of command that was bothering him. It was the being fried alive of command that was giving him problems. He was also pretty sure that unless they came up with something about this dragon very soon, then the patrician was going to be unhappy. And when the patrician was unhappy, he became very democratic. He found intricate and painful ways of spreading that unhappiness as far as possible. Responsibility, the sergeant thought, was a terrible thing. So was being horribly tortured. As far as he could see, the two facts were rapidly heading towards one another. And thus, he was terribly relieved when a small coach pulled up outside the yard. It was very old and battered. There was a faded coat of arms on the door. Painted on the back, and rather newer, was the little message, "Whinny if you love dragons." Out of it, wincing as he got down, stepped Captain Vimes. Following him was the woman known to the sergeant as Mad Sybil Ramkin. And finally, hopping down obediently on the end of its lead, was a small... The sergeant was too nervous to take account of its actual size. "Well, I'll be mogadored! They've only gone and caught it!" Nobby looked up from the table in the corner where he was continually failing to learn that it is almost impossible to play a game of skill and bluff against an opponent who smiles all the time. The librarian took advantage of the diversion to help himself to a couple of cards off the bottom of the pack.
Don't be daft. That's just a swamp dragon,
said Nobby.
She's all right, Isley Sybil. A real lady.
The other two guards turned and stared at him. This was Nobby talking.
You two can bloody well stop that, he said. Why shouldn't I know a lady when I sees one? She give me a cup of tea and a cup thin as paper and a silver spoon in it,
he said, speaking as one who had peeped over the plateau of social distinction.
And I gave it back to her, so you can stop looking at me like that.
What is it you actually do on your evenings off? Said Colin.
No business of yourn.
Did you really give the spoon back? Said Carrot.
Yes, I bloody well did,
said Nobby hotly.
Attention, lads,
said the sergeant, flooded with relief. The other two entered the room. Vimes gave his men his usual look of resigned dismay. My squad, he mumbled. Fine body of men, said Lady Ramkin. The good old rank and file, eh? The rank, anyway, said Vimes. Lady Ramkin beamed encouragingly. This led to a strange shuffling among the men. Sergeant Colin, by dint of some effort, managed to make his chest stick out more than his stomach. Carrot straightened up from his habitual stoop. Nobby vibrated with soldierly bearing, hands thrust straight down by his sides, thumbs pointing sharply forward, pigeon chest inflated so much that his feet were in danger of leaving the ground. I always think we can all sleep safer in my bed, knowing that these brave men are watching over us, said Lady Ramkin, walking sedately along the rank, like a treasure galleon running ahead of a mild breeze. And who is this? It is difficult for an orangutan to stand to attention. Its body can master the general idea, but its skin can't. The librarian was doing his best, however, standing in a sort of respectful heap at the end of the line and maintaining the kind of complex salute you can only achieve with a 4-foot arm.
He's plain clothes, ma'am, said Nobby smartly. Special ape services.
Very enterprising indeed, said Lady Ramkin. How long have you been an ape, my man?
Ook.
Well done. She turned to Vimes, who was definitely looking incredulous. A credit to you, she said. A fine body of men.
Ook.
Anthropoids, corrected Lady Ramkin, with barely a break in the flow. For a moment, the rank felt as though they had just returned from single-handedly conquering a distant province. They felt, in fact, tremendously bucked up, which was how Lady Ramkin would almost certainly have put it, and which was definitely several letters of the alphabet away from how they normally felt. Oh boy. Farmo says, don't think too hard about that one, kids. Even the librarian felt favored, and for once had let the phrase, my man, pass without comment. A trickling noise and a strong chemical smell prompted them to look around. Good boy Bindle Featherstone was squatting with an air of sheepish innocence alongside what was not so much a stain on the carpet as a hole in the floor. A few wisps of smoke were curling up from the edges. Lady Ramkin sighed.
Don't you worry, ma'am,
Volunteered Nobby cheerfully.
Soon have that cleaned up.
I'm afraid they're often like that when they're excited, she said.
Fine specimen you got there, ma'am,
Nobby went on, reveling in the newfound experience of social intercourse. It's not mine, she said. It belongs to the captain now. Or all of you, perhaps. A sort of mascot. His name is Good Boy Bindle Featherstone. Good Boy Bindle Featherstone bore up stoically under the weight of the name. Stoically? Stoically under the weight of the name, and sniffed a table leg.
He looks more like my brother Errol,
said Nobby, playing the cheeky, chirpy, lovable city sparrow card for all it was worth.
Got the same pointed nose? Excuse me for saying so, m'lady.
Vimes looked at the creature, which was investigating its new environment, and knew that it was now, irrevocably, an Errol. The little dragon took an experimental bite out of the table, chewed it for a few seconds, spat it out, curled up, and went to sleep.
He ain't going to set fire to anything, is he?
Said the sergeant anxiously. I don't think so. He doesn't seem to have worked out what his flame ducts are for yet, said Lady Ramkin. You can't teach him anything about relaxing, though, said Vimes. Anyway, men.
Ook.
I wasn't talking to you, sir. What's this doing here?
Said Sergeant Colin hurriedly. With you being away and all, and us likely to be short-handed, Carrot here says it's all according to the law and that. I swore him in, sir. The 8th, sir.
Swore him in what, Sergeant? Said Vimes.
As special constable, sir, said Colin, blushing. You know, sir, sort of citizen's watch.
Vimes threw up his hands.
Special? Bloody unique!
The librarian gave Vimes a big smile.
Just temporarily, sir. For the duration, like, said Colin pleadingly. We could do with the help, sir. And, well, he's the only one who seems to like us.
I think it's a frightfully good idea, said Lady Ramkin.
Well done, that ape.
Vimes shrugged. The world was mad enough already. What could make it worse? Okay, he said. Okay, I give in. Fine. Give him a badge, although I'm damned if I know where he'll wear it. Fine. Yes. Why not?
You all right, Captain?
Said Colin, all concerned. Fine, fine. Welcome to the new watch, snapped Vimes, striding vaguely around the room. Great! After all, we pay peanuts, don't we? So we might as well employ The sergeant's hand slapped respectfully across Vimes's mouth.
Just one thing, Captain,
said Colin urgently to Vimes's astonished eyes.
You don't use the M word. Gets right up his nose, sir. He can't help it. He loses all self-control. Like a red rag to what's name, sir. Ape is all right, sir, but not the M word. Because, sir, when he gets angry, he doesn't just go and sulk, sir, if you get my drift. He's no trouble at all apart from that, sir. All right? Just don't say monkey. Oh, shit.
The brethren were nervous. Let me catch up on chat first. Farmo says, someone on the internet said that their father said, don't trust someone who's too cool on the first date. You should try to find someone who's a little nervous to start with. The world's coming up as the popular theory goes. Oh, yeah. Sharkies say, you gotta love how greasy Nobby is, but you can't help but have affection for him. Farmo says he's such a great character. Dragon, heart. Sharkies say, Errol. Farmo says, I love him. Sharky's posting another heart. Alright. The brethren were nervous. He'd heard them talking. Things were moving too fast for them. He'd thought he'd led them into the conspiracy a bit at a time, never giving them more truth than their little brains could cope with. But he'd still overestimated them. A firm hand was needed. Firm, but fair. Sharky say, the brethren were nervous. What a great line to start into these flop-ups. Farmo says, much love for the little gassy puppy dragon. Yeah. Brothers, said the Supreme Grand Master, are the cuffs of veracity duly enhanced?
What?
Said Brother Watchtower vaguely.
Oh, the cuffs. Yeah, enhanced. Right.
And the martlets of beckoning, are they fittingly divested? Brother Plasterer gave a guilty start.
Me? What? Oh, fine, no problem. Divested. Yes.
The Supreme Grand Master paused. Brothers, he said softly, we are so near. Just once more. Just a few hours. Once more and the world is ours. Do you understand, brothers? Brother Plasterer shuffled a foot.
Well, he said, I mean, of course. Yes. No fears about that. Behind you, 110%.
He's going to say only, thought the Supreme Grand Master.
Only?
Ah.
We, that is, all of us, we've been odd, really. You feel so different, don't you, after summoning the dragon? Sort of...
cleaned out, said Brother Plasterer helpfully.
Yes, it's, like it's sort of...
Brother Watchtower struggled with the serpents of self-expression.
Taking something out of you. Sucked dry, said Brother Plasterer. Yes, like he said. And we... Well, it's maybe a bit risky. Like stuff's being dragged from your actual living brain by eldritch creatures from the beyond, said Brother Plasterer. I'd have said more like a bit of a sick headache myself, said Brother Watchtower helplessly. And we was wondering, you know, about all this stuff about cosmic balance and that, because, well, look what happened to poor old Dunnikin. Could be a bit of a judgment.
It was just a maddened crocodile hidden in a flower bed, said the Supreme Grand Master. It could have happened to anyone. I understand your feelings, however.
You do?
Said Brother Watchtower. Oh, yes. They're only natural. All the greatest wizards feel a little ill at ease before undertaking a great work such as this. The brethren preened themselves. Great wizards. That's us, yeah. But in a few hours it'll be over, and I am sure that the king will reward you handsomely. The future will be glorious. This normally did the trick. It didn't appear to be working this time.
But the dragon,
Brother Watchtower began. There won't be any dragon. We won't need it. Look, said the Supreme Grand Master. It's quite simple. The lad will have a marvelous sword. Everyone knows kings have marvelous swords.
This'd be the marvelous sword you've been telling us about, would it?
Said Brother Plasterer. And when it touches the dragon, said the Supreme Grand Master, it'll be... boom!
Yeah, they do that, said Brother Doorkeeper. My uncle kicked a swamp dragon once. He found it eating his pumpkins. Damn thing nearly took his leg off.
The Supreme Grand Master sighed. A few more hours, yes, and then no more of this. The only thing he hadn't decided was whether to let them alone, who'd believe them after all, or send the guard to arrest them for being terminally stupid. No, he said patiently. I mean the dragon will vanish. We'll have sent it back. End of dragon. Won't people be a bit suspicious? Said Brother Plasterer. Won't they expect lumps of dragon all over the place? No, said the Supreme Grandmaster triumphantly, because one touch from the sword of truth and justice will totally destroy the spawn of evil. The brethren stared at him. That's what they'll believe, anyway, he added. We can provide a bit of mystic smoke at the time. Dead easy, mystic smoke, said Brother Fingers. No bits, then, said Brother Plasterer, a shade disappointed. Brother Watchtower coughed. Dunno if people will accept that, he said. Sounds a bit too neat-like. Listen, snapped the Supreme Grandmaster. They'll accept anything. They'll see it happen. People will be so keen to see the boy win, they won't think twice about it. Depend upon it. Now, let us commence. He concentrated. Yes, it was easier. Easier every time. He could feel the scales, feel the rage of the dragon as he reached into the place where dragons went and took control. This was power, and it was his. Sergeant Colin winced. Ow! Don't be a big softy, said Lady Ramkin cheerfully, tightening the bandage with a well-practiced skill handed down through many generations of Ramkin womenfolk. He hardly touched you. And he's very sorry, said Carrot sharply. Show the sergeant how sorry you are. Go on. Ook, said the librarian, sheepishly. Don't let him kiss me, squeaked Colin. Do you think picking someone up by their ankles and bouncing their head on the floor comes under the heading of striking a superior officer? Said Carrot. I'm not pressing charges, me, said the sergeant hurriedly. Can we get on? Said Vimes impatiently. We're going to see if Errol can sniff out the dragon's lair. Lady Ramkin thinks it's got to be worth a try. You mean set a deep hole with spring-loaded sides, tripwires, whirling knife blades driven by water power, broken glass and scorpions, to catch a thief, Captain? Said the sergeant doubtfully. Ow! Yes, we don't want to lose the scent, said Lady Ramkin. Stop being a big baby, Sergeant. Brilliant idea about using Errol, ma'am, if I may make so bold, said Nobby, while the sergeant blushed under his bandage. Vimes was not certain how long he would be able to put up with Nobby the social mountaineer. Carrot said nothing. He was gradually coming to terms with the fact that he probably wasn't a dwarf, but dwarf blood flowed in his veins in accordance with the famous principle of morphic resonance, and his borrowed genes were telling him that nothing was going to be that simple. Finding a horde, even when the dragon wasn't at home, was pretty risky. Anyway, he was certain he'd know if there was no one around. The presence of large amounts of gold always made a dwarf's palms itch, and his weren't itching. We'll start by that wall in the shades, said the captain. Sergeant Colin glanced sideways at Lady Ramkin, and found it impossible to show cowardice in the face of the supportive. He contented himself with, Is that wise, Captain? Of course it isn't. If we were wise, we wouldn't be in the watch. I say, all this is tremendously exciting, said Lady Ramkin. Oh, I don't think you should come, milady, said Vimes. Sybil, please. It's a very disreputable area, you see. But I'm sure I shall be perfectly safe with your men, she said. I'm sure vagabonds just melt away when they see you. That's dragons, thought Vimes. They melt away when they see dragons, and just leave their shadows on the wall. Whenever he felt that he was slowing down, or that he was losing interest, he remembered those shadows, and it was like having dull fire poured down his backbone. Things like that shouldn't be allowed to happen. Not in my city. Farmo says second book where they're looking for a dragon lair. Yeah, there are certain vague similarities. Very like abstract similarities. Alright, let's see how long this next section is. Yeah, I think we've got time for another like 3 pages or so. In fact, the Shades were not a problem. Many of its denizens were out horde hunting anyway, and those that remained were far less inclined than hitherto to lurk in dark alleys. Besides, the more sensible of them recognized that Lady Ramkin, if waylaid, would probably tell them to pull up their socks and not be silly, in a voice so used to command that they would probably find themselves doing it. The wall hadn't been knocked down yet, and still bore its grisly fresco. Errol sniffed around it, trotted up the alley once or twice, and went to sleep.
Didn't work,
said Sergeant Colin.
Good idea, though,
said Nobby loyally. It could be all the rain and people walking about, I suppose, said Lady Ramkin. Vimes scooped up the dragon. It had been a vain hope anyway. It was just better to be doing something than nothing. We'd better get back, he said. The sun's gone down. They walked back in silence. The dragons even tamed the Shades, Vimes thought. It's taken over the whole city, even when it isn't here. People'll start tying virgins to rocks any day now. It's a metaphor of human bloody existence, a dragon. And if that wasn't bad enough, it's also a bloody great hot flying thing. He pulled out the key to the new headquarters. While he was fumbling in the lock, Errol woke up and started to yammer. Not now, Vimes said. His side twinged. The night had barely started, and already he felt too tired. A slate slid down the roof and smashed on the cobbles beside him.
Captain,
hissed Sergeant Colin. What?
It's on the roof, Captain.
Something about the sergeant's voice got through to Vimes. It wasn't excited. It wasn't frightened. It just had a tone of dull, leaden terror. He looked up. Errol started to bounce up and down under his arm. The dragon, was peering down interestedly over the guttering. Its face alone was taller than a man. Its eyes were the size of very large eyes, colored a smoldering red, and filled with an intelligence that had nothing to do with human beings. It was far older, for one thing. It was an intelligence that had already been long basted in guile and marinated in cunning by the time a group of almost monkeys were wondering whether standing on 2 legs was a good career move. It wasn't an intelligence that had any truck with, or even understood, the arts of diplomacy. It wouldn't play with you or ask you riddles, but it understood all about arrogance and power and cruelty, and if it could possibly manage it, it would burn your head off. because it liked to. It was even more angry than usual at the moment. It could sense something behind its eyes. A tiny, weak, alien mind, bloated with self-satisfaction. It was infuriating, like an unscratchable itch. It was making it do things it didn't want to do, and stopping it from doing things it wanted to do very much. Those eyes were, for the moment, focused on Errol, who was going frantic. Vimes realized that all that stood between him and 1,000,000 degrees of heat was the dragon's vague interest in why Vimes had a smaller dragon under his arm. "Don't make any sudden moves," said Lady Ramkin's voice behind him. "And don't show fear. They can always tell when you're afraid." "Is there any other advice you can offer at this time?" said Vimes slowly, trying to speak without moving his lips. "Well, tickling them behind their ears often works." "Oh," said Vimes weakly. "And a good sharp no, and taking away their food bowl." "Ah?" "And hitting them on the nose with a roll of paper is what I do in extreme cases." In the slow, brightly outlined, desperate world Vimes was now inhabiting, which seemed to revolve around the craggy nostrils a few meters away from him, he became aware of a gentle hissing sound. The dragon was taking a deep breath. The intake of air stopped. Vimes looked into the darkness of the flame ducts and wondered whether he'd see anything, whether there'd be some tiny white glow or something before fiery oblivion swept over him. At that moment, a horn rang out. The dragon raised its head in a puzzled way and made a noise that sounded vaguely interrogative without being in any way a word. The horn rang out again. The noise seemed to have a number of echoes that lived a life of their own. It sounded like a challenge. If that wasn't what it was, then the hornblower was soon going to be in trouble, because the dragon gave Vimes a smoldering look, unfolded its enormous wings, leapt heavily into the air, and, against all the rules of aeronautics, flew slowly away in the direction of the sound. Nothing in the world should have been able to fly like that. The wings thumped up and down with a noise like potted thunder, but the dragon moved as though it was idly sculling through the air. If it stopped flapping, the movement suggested, it would simply glide to a halt. It floated, not flew. For something the size of a barn with an armor-plated hide, it was a pretty good trick. It passed over their heads like a barge, heading for the plaza of broken moons. "Follow it!" shouted Lady Ramkin. "That's not right, it flying like that. I'm pretty sure there's something in one of the witchcraft laws," said Carrot, taking out his notebook. "And it's damaged the roof. It's really piling up the offenses, you know." "You all right, Captain?" said Sergeant Colin. "I could see right up its nose," said Captain Vimes dreamily. His eyes focused on the worried face of the sergeant. "Where's it gone?" he demanded. Colin pointed along the street. Vimes glowered at the shape disappearing over the rooftops. "Follow it!" he said. All right, it's 9:10. I think that's a good place to stop. Okay, there's some words happening in chat here. Let's see. Farmos learned some new words today. zeugma and Calypsis. Sharkies noticed the eye-sized eyes. Well, not quite eye-sized eyes. I think they were eyes the size of rather large eyes. No, they were eyes the size of very large eyes. So it's not eye-sized eyes, it's very large eye-sized eyes. Pharma says zeugma is the use of a solipsis. Pharma says a turn-off phrase where a word modifies two separate words on the same sentence in different ways. A turn-of phrase. Like opened the door and his heart. It's a good description of that noise, you know, just what it sounds like. Well, that was a fun section. Some good Lady Ramkin bits there. Also, Errol. Errol is just a great little dragon. Some good descriptions of the dragon. For instance, having very large eye-sized eyes. The interrogative dragon noise. Yes. Things are moving along. I wonder who might be sounding that horn that saved Vimes's life. And gutsy of little Errol to be yelling in the face of the real big dragon. Pharma says, plus that first scene. I love Vimes as Clint Eastwood in his PJs. Yeah. Nightshirt and pink slippers with pom-poms on them, holding a dragon like a flamethrower. Do you feel lucky? Yeah, the Sharkies. Definitely a bit of a dig at Tolkien's Smaug to say that this big dragon won't ask riddles. Yeah, that's definitely true. Definitely caught that bit, especially reading this one on the heels of The Hobbit. Farmo says, reminds me of a little dog again, barking at a big dog. Yeah, that's a good description. That makes sense. Alright, well, I think that's a good place to wrap this up. I'm going to go eat some dolmethes, which I probably have no idea how to actually pronounce. You know, rice and whatnot wrapped in grape leaves. Our little dog knows that. Sharky say, like Smaug wants to feel superior to other creatures, this dragon knows he's superior, so has more time just to be cruel. Well, and they've said that dragons can speak in Discworld, but there's been no evidence of that yet. Ericker says, haha, he does not need to play games. Yeah, and that, I guess, probably mostly isn't interested in bandying words about with humans and the like. Although, if they can speak, then that means the dragon possibly understood what Lady Ramkin was saying about scratching behind his ears, or whapping him on the nose with a rolled up paper. Hey, Benabik? Benabon Bean? I hear some clicks. What if I grab this bag? Oh, there he is. What? Oh, good puppy. Oh, you guys probably couldn't see that at all. I was blocking it. Let me try it this way. What if I do this? Up. Over here. Ben. Oh, no. Too nervous? What? Come on. Come get it. Ben. Oh, off he goes. Oh, puppy. Well, I hope everyone has a good weekend. Wish me luck with running session 0 of the new D&D game on Sunday. I'll probably be spending a bunch of tomorrow doing last minute prep for that. Although, I mean, I'm mostly ready for it. And I hope everyone has a good weekend. I think I maybe already said that. And we'll be back next Wednesday to continue and see what happens with, I was going to say chasing the dragon, but Farmos is probably going to spend tomorrow on homework. Turkeys, you'll have to let us know how that goes. Oh yes, I definitely will. Farmos says to Erica, enjoy your Monday. Alright. Well, have a good night, have a good weekend and or start of your week, and hopefully I'll see y'all next week. Bye-bye.